Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie video, taken from the HFY subreddit called The Lies of Humanity, written by Grenadier42. The link to the original will be down below, and, as always, I hope that you enjoy. Humans are a race of liars. Saw slurred loudly as he sat down his bottle of heavy vapors. He itched his nose for a moment with his offhand claw, trying to get the vapors to push deep, before he leaned back and sighed contentedly, a pale puff of yellow leaving his mouth. If their mouths are moving, they're lying. A quiet clattering of teeth and amusement arose from around the table, as some of the other snicks inhaled their own vapors in solidarity. Mutterings of raw deals, poor sportsmanship, and hints of outlandish stories fluttering around the tables as the group sat their own bottles back down. One or two of the group, younger hatchmates, shuffled nervously, unsure of how to join in on the conversation. The remainder kept quiet. "I was on a trade mission," Tsar muttered, leaning back forward to look at the rest of the table, headed for the vassal roundabout. A good trade deal, I was told by the human who'd organized it. He took another inhale of his vapors before setting it back down. "I was supposed to be trading for 400 tail length of processed Grundalian fibers." A whistle arose from one of the others around the table, causing Tsar to point at the other snick, shouting, I know! 400 tail lengths, guaranteed to have been sheared off a live one. Good grade, nice payday." "So what happened?" one of the others asked. "Well, Sixt, I'll tell you," he muttered, Tsar, as he leaned forward conspiratorially. "It was an alpaca." A roar arose from around the table, and the other snicks shouted and pounded the table in annoyance and anger as their blood brothers' mistreatment. "I know," shouted Tsar. "A bunch of lies tried to fake me out with a substitute. A human substitute." "What did you do?" asked Asik. Tsar breathed in another nose full of vapors and quickly exhaled the yellow haze in annoyance, wasting the boost to his high. "I refused the trade, took my money and went back home." He went to take another deep inhale, but stopped when he noticed the bottle was empty. He waved up to the query, manning the bar for another before sighing. "Ended up having to make some bad trades for the next several moon cycles, just to make back the money I had lost." "You know they venerate their liars, right?" offered up Harris, who was sitting off his Tsar's left. All eyes turned to Harris's as he flicked his tongue out as a sign of dismissal. "I studied their histories. Some of their greatest heroes are criminals and liars." "Like who?" asked Ra. "One of their old tribe, the guy named Seesaw." "Good snicked name," whispered Sauce. "Right?" he agreed, Hriss. "Anyways, he was part warrior tribe where great honors could be bestowed for righteous defense of the homelands. However, his tribe was at peace, so how could he get these honors?" "No," whispered several at the table. "Yes," said Hriss. "He went to the edge of the tribal lands and waited, and then when some refugees, yes, refugees, requested access to pass through, he slaughtered them." Harris made a stabbing motion with his hands. "Human killing human, one at a time, with knives. Not with large weapons. It was his and his soldiers' word against dead humans, so he called it an invasion." Tails and tongues twitched nervously as the implications of this set in. A war of conquest based upon lies. Slaughter in the thousands, based solely on one human's words. How imaginable was that? Where were his nestmates to counter his word? Where were the righteous laws to prevent this from happening? Where were the governing officials to put a stop to him? Later, his people made him a god. Harris added before taking a casual sniff of his vapors. "An entire race of liars," hissed Sauce venomously, which set off a chain reaction of all the others muttering curses and condemnations of an entire human race. The ramblings from earlier became full stories, recounting all the ways in which the humans had personally lied to each of them. Promises of divine justice, of good deals, of conquests, of bumps in the night, of chances that, if taken, would pay off. Finally, Saw noticed that one at the table, the old snicked nameless three, had not joined in the conversation. He quieted everyone else and being motioning towards Lishri. Lishri, you have worked with the humans more than any of us. Surely you must have better stories than all of the Snosnak. What is the worst lie that the human has ever told you? Lishri had been sitting still, nursing a bottle of vapors that was still mostly full. He took a brief sniff before setting it back down, letting the green vapor slowly ooze back into his nostrils. After he had finished breathing, he said quietly, but clearly, "Go, I'm right behind you." A few quiet jaw clicks and half-hearted amusement rippled through the group as some attempted to laugh. But their tails twitched easily gave way to a nervous energy that had settled over the table. Eyes moved about, looking from Snect to Snect, each of them trying to figure out what the joke was they were missing. Finally, Saw spoke up. "I'm not sure that we understand. The worst lie—" "That was the worst lie," Lishri said before repeating, "Go, I'm right behind you." He looked around the room, taking in the questioning gazes, and before he finally sighed heavily. "All right," he finally said to all of the silent questions. He breathed in some more of the vapors before beginning his story. "This was many moon cycles ago. I worked in a mining station in the Ztari sector. They had a gas giant there with an H3, and more than happy to sell the mineral rights to the highest bidder. My firm won, so the mining and the processing plants were set up in orbit. Very normal, very ordinary. I had a friend there, a human, named Lewis. He paused. He chuckled quietly to himself for a moment before sharply breathing in. I hope that he wouldn't mind me calling him a friend. He looked at the confusion as the other snicked faces. Human friendship is very, nebulous. The word has different meanings depending on who says it. To some, a friend is like a brood cousin, someone you see occasionally, but you don't have a strong attachment to. You talk, crack jokes, but never discuss serious matters. To others, a friend is like a combination between a broodmate and a bloodmate. Impossible, hissed Sauce. A human willing to offer a life for a life. Yes, it is true, said Lishri, and I would hope that Lewis considered us this. But his tail twitched for a moment in contemplation before he continued. Lewis and I did not start off on speaking terms. I was aware of the reputation of his species, and so I did my best to avoid them. However, as our environmental needs are similar, our kind were forced to share the dormitory. Lishri took another inhale of the vapors before setting the bottle down. He held the vapor in his lungs, and, as he spoke, it slowly leaked out of his nose and mouth in a fine green mist. Being an H3 refinery, we were a popular target. Sure, we had a defensive force, but, as you all know, bombardments can take hours. Locked in the dormitories, there was little else to do. So Lewis tried to teach myself and some of the other inhabitants games, namely poker. I can see some of your reactions. You already know this game, Lishri said, quickly clacking his teeth in amusement. A decidedly human game. A game built on deception and money. To the victor goes the spoils, and all of that nonsense, Lishri added with a sigh. I was terrible at it. I lost so many of my money to Lewis, but he always returned it at the end of the game. That was just for fun, he would say. Soon we'll play a real game. He returned your money? Saw asked incredulously. He did, but I doubt that it was out of charity, Lishri said, twitching his tail dismissively. If I lost all of my money, I would be out, and there would be no more game then. Ah, it was to stay entertained then, he offered Hriss. Most likely, agreed Lishri. I think that he just enjoyed the company. Many of the other species can't talk without translators, which are notorious for inaccuracies. But our mouths are made enough to same sounds that, once the language is learned, you can just talk. Listry paused then, swirling his bottle of vapors in his hand while staring into them. The rolling green grass rolling over itself like water. The first time he saved my life, I expected a call of blood debts, and perhaps in a way he did. You'll do the same for me next time, right? Was all that he offered. Listry took a deep inhale before exhaling all of it in one hurried snort. Perhaps that was his blood debt. Perhaps he merely didn't want to lose his poker partner. I don't know. Life continued like that for some time. It's a dangerous job mining and refining H3. We had many near misses with dangerous elements, cascading refineries and other issues that came from the mining process. I saved his life once too. That night, I was also won a game of poker for the first time. Listry puffed out his dwell whip for a brief moment before retracting it. He told me that we could play a real game after that. It was a good day. This was not all some sort of bonding ritual, asked Laura. To my knowledge, no, answered Listry. But I think that was when we became friends. We requested shifts together, we ate together, and most importantly, we talked. I learned a lot about humanity during that time. But the lie, prodded Sars. Ah, said Listry quietly. Yes. Please forgive an old select for his memories. He leaned his head back and stared at the ceiling. It started out as a normal day, as far as ones with bombardments went. We hunkered down and waited until the entire station shook. That was unusual. Lewis and I had been involved in a very heated game of poker when he looked at me saying, that wasn't right. I agreed. Listry looked back at the table. We bypassed the locks and snuck out, heading towards the command station through some of the back tunnels and access ways. I am glad that Lewis had that kind of foresight, because at one point we passed by a heavily armored troop, and blood. So much blood outside the hallways. Listry took another inhale of his vapors and slowly exhaled. It was the Black Lance. A hiss, a deep intake of breath across the room told Listry that he didn't have to waste too much time explaining them. So he pushed on. Their own refineries had apparently been retaken by peacekeepers, and so they needed a new one, a better one, in more isolated arm of the galaxy. Ours. Lewis told me that we had to make it to Command Center. He had an idea to save some lives. I followed, confident in his ideas, as they had saved both our lives numerous times. Listry paused and twitched his tail nervously before continuing. There were two of them at the command center. We had plasma torches, they had plasma guns. It was brutal, like opening a can of Syrah as Listry nest. A few nervous glances made about the table. Everyone had always wondered where the scars on Listry's dwell whip came from, and it seems that now they knew. Listry, either ignorant or unconcerned by the glances, pushed on. We knew we had limited time then. They had managed to get out the radio calls, and we already knew that they were executing everyone that they found. We just had started up the process of putting out the red alerts and locking down the passageways to allow some of the other miners to escape, when we heard them coming. Listry fell silent again, and remained that way for several long minutes. The attention at the table was complete, and no one dared interrupt at this point of the story. Finally, Listry seemed to get a hold of himself before he quietly said, "That was when Lewis said, 'Go, I'm right behind you.'" Green snot began dripping from Listry's nose, causing him to furiously wipe it away. I ran like a coward, but he said that he was right behind me. We were friends. Humans certainly don't lie to their friends, right? No one dared move, or even speak, as Listry struggled to get the snot under control. He wiped it away again and again before it finally slowed, and then stopped altogether. He took a deep inhale of his vapors, seemingly unconcerned with the potential side effects, and pressed on. I learned a lot about humanity that day. See? Humans lie to protect what they hold dear. Nervous murmurs arose from his listeners, but he pushed on. It's true. Sometimes that lie is to protect vanity, or wealth, or power. but other times that lie is to protect something more precious. Humans have lies about a clawed red man who delivers presents to egglings, but that is a lie to protect the eggling's sense of wonder, Lishri said. Or they have lies about what happened after death, but that is to provide comfort or solace to those who are mourning and in grief. Humans don't have broodmates like Snikt do. They are born alone and grow alone. They have only strangers and the old to share their struggles with, and so lies bring with them comfort. Their lies wrap them up in security and safety, and it allows them to explain and understand their surroundings, or even guard themselves against the unwanted conflicts. Our worlds are similar, both full of predators and poison, but the humans have no sharp teeth, no claws, no colored scales to hide. They feel fear like prey, but hunt like predators. They fought for their right to survive, and they did it through lies. Lies to prevent emotional outbursts and keep the tribe intact. Lies to keep children from running off and accidentally alerting a predator. Or even lies to create amusement and pass the time. I don't understand, said Sa, interrupting briefly. They lie to ensure their own safety. Yes, said Lishri. The darkness to them held horror. The loss of a single eggling was devastating to their tribes, as it could take a full 4-moon cycle before another could be born. Their brood mothers frequently died during the birthing process, and so, for the sake of the tribe, they did not have the luxury of truth. They could not tell the egglings the truth of the darkness like ours did, because the darkness, to them, held a fear that they could not escape. So they invented lies and stories to tell the egglings about the power of this darkness so that they would be afraid and be careful. And in their caution, the tribe would live. That hasn't stopped. Even now the humans fear the darkness. They fear the loss of self, and thus their tribe. If they stray too deeply into it, and the greatest darkness of the humans' fear is the lost one. That, I think, is why Lewis lied. He lied because his species spends their entire lives looking into that final darkness. And he wanted to go into it alone, just like how he was born. He lied so that I would leave and save the others, so that he could go on his final journey, knowing that his lie would protect future tribes. He lied to protect. Lishri inhaled the last of his vapors and sat the bottle back down. He looked at the group around him, but none met his gaze. Humans have many lies. Some are malicious, but many are just their way. They are experiencing the world the only way that they know how. His gaze turned to Riss, who looked away. The seesaw you venomously condemned. A human's leader was venom-born, their venom sac so full that they turned it onto their own tribe for amusement. This human wrote laws, scale-born laws, that protected and uplifted the skin-born, their weakest. He did it the only way he knew how, by lying to the venomous so that he would grant him the power to protect. Then, when they killed him, those same skin-born rose up in his defense and shackled their rulers the only way that they could. Defecation. The venom-born were now forever under the watchful eyes of the skin-born guardian, because none of them would challenge a god. And about that time, the door to the bar swung in, and a group of humans came in, loudly joking and bragging about their hauls for the day, while shouting out drink orders. Lishri stood and waved to them, causing them to wave back excitedly. He looked back at the table of the Snikt. "If you'll excuse me, my friends are here." He then pulled a deck of cards out of the pouch on his waist and waved it towards the humans as he approached. They cheered, clapped him on the back, and offered him a chair and a bottle of green heavy vapors. The other table remained quiet for some time. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so, listed in the description down below. The easiest and best way would be to share this video and my channel as much as possible. I'll see you all in the next video, and I hope that you have a good one until then. Cheers.